Hello and welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here today with video number 7 in the build of the Beanery, so stay tuned. So thanks for coming back for this video 7 of the Beanery build. There's going to be a lot more videos in this series. This is quite a big building. Like I've said in the previous ones, there's over 100 and some windows in this building. We've kind of got a small chunk of those out of the way, but there's still a lot to go. There's a lot more sections of buildings to add to the back of this. In this video, we're going to go ahead and start on the next couple of walls for the buildings coming back from behind this section on back. And I'm just going to build them as individual walls for the two sides right now, and then work on walls and put together some finished products to put together. Because as a whole, once you start putting the next section of walls on here and then the hotel walls back behind that, you get this huge building. And when you're going back and trying to do windows and painting and all that stuff later on, it just gets to be too big of a structure to turn and work and get your hands in all the little areas and get it in positions that you need to do. So I think it would be better if we build all these substructures and kind of get them semi-completed and then put them all together as a one big structure. So that's the direction we're going to head in. So we're going to start on these next sections of walls. You can see in these photographs here the first two buildings we put together. Then beyond that, there's a part of a picture here of one of the next little buildings on this side, and then it goes back into this third building, and then there's a small building that connect the two, kind of a utility building down that connect the two at the bottom. And the other side is real similar. Looking at it from the front here, you can see, well, you can't see the right side too well, but the left side is almost a mirror image of the far other side that we just looked at. There's a small building that comes out and then steps back into a larger building that has more depth to it behind that. And there's also another small building that connects those two buildings down at ground level, 1 story 2. So here we have the buildings laid out where the windows and doors and everything go. I've kind of placed these. What I did was measure off the other two-story building that I had, so that I knew I had all the windows at the same levels as those original buildings. And then place the doors in place. You can see the white door is slightly larger than the gray doors that I have, but I'm going to work with it, and we'll go with it as it is and see how that all works out. Okay, so we go back into the same process that we used for all the other buildings. One thing I can't stress enough is here you see me switching out my knife blade. This is like number 10 or 11 knife blades for this building. If you have the capability, just keep changing out and using sharp blades. There's nothing better than a sharp tool to be working with. And then I see I've already pre-drilled the holes for the windows in these, but I'm going to come back and sand the 45-degree edges. There's two corners on these that are outside corners that do meet. So I want to make sure I get a good 45-degree angle on those. So I'm starting off with the sanding block like I did on the walls of the previous buildings and getting the majority of the 45-degree angle cut down with this. Like I said before, it probably would be better to use a 45-degree block behind this to sand with, but I've not, knock on wood, and messed one up to this point, but it is possible. So then I come back with a file. I don't overdo too much with the sandpaper, but I come back with a file and I just work the whole edge to get clear up to where there's like a knife point edge on the outside edge of this 45-degree brick. I want the corners to meet just as tight as they possibly can so that the mortar lines and the bricks really look like one unit wrapping around the corner. Now some of my corners on this building are real tight, and others of them do have a slight gap that I think it's so small of a gap that with paint and stuff we can go ahead and fill those gaps and it won't be a major issue. And here, even though the previous one I did the 45-degree angles on, you saw the holes drilled for the windows already. I'm kind of jumping back and forth here with my video, but I'm coming back and scribing the windows in this wall so that I know exactly where the placement needs to be. I came off the tower in the other building to make sure all the heights were the same. Of course, with the doors, you know where the heights of the bottom story window is, but I want the second story windows to line up with all the other buildings. And then coming back and pre-drilling all the holes with the Dremel the way I did. Like I said, it just kind of melts through the plastic versus cutting through it like a drill bit would, but it's a lot safer and I don't snap any of the plastic using this, so I decided to keep on going with this particular method as far as pre-doing my holes with this. So that's what we do. Then I come back with a knife. After I do the nibbling, it gets close to where the lines are, the scribe lines for the outside of the windows, but it's a little rough, so I come in with an X-Acto knife then and cut these to within just a real close tolerance. And you'll see here, one thing to do, like changing your knife blade every once in a while. When filing plastic, your file fills up with tons of little bits of plastic, so keep a steel brush of some sort around to keep your file cleaned out as well. It makes the whole work process a lot easier. And just filing out all the windows. See, the bottom one has already been finished in this particular piece, but just coming back and filing all the holes to where the windows fit all nice and snug. And you can see here there's next to nothing for any gaps or anything between the windows and the brick. And then, since everything else has been done, I start putting the two sides of this particular building together and gluing the corners on those, making sure they're real tight seamed on the corners, using an angle and making sure there's a 45-degree angle on it as well. And then coming back with those two wall sections and gluing the two sections together. This is one long unit with actually two buildings that interconnect. These two corners here you do not have to use 45 degrees on because they just butt up flat against each other. And here I'm just putting glue on. Usually the first strip up through a piece of plastic with the glue, I think the plastic just seems to suck it up, so I always do a double take on applying a real thin layer of glue. And then after using the angle on it again, I get a nice strong joint on it, and there's kind of the finished process of that wall that sits back behind the tower. Now I did do angle bracing on this as well to help support it. You can see the braces kind of in this picture here. And save all your scraps. This is that little shed, one-story shed that's in between the two buildings there. I'm glad I saved all my scrap because this gave me these two pieces here to cut the walls out for that shed. And here I'm just marking them and getting everything to size so I know exactly where I want everything to be put. And scribing them with a knife and getting a good scribe down in it so I can break the plastic apart, and gives me the two walls that I need for this structure. They're a little over 9 feet tall and two different widths. You can see here on the back side there's a thick plastic edge on one side, so I'm using it as a guide for the cutting on this particular piece of plastic, and then just kind of working it back and forth until it snaps out of place as well. It's hard when you don't have opposite corners, but here a little bit of pliers helps to do the job without harming any of the plastic. And this building also has an outside corner on it like the big buildings did, so I need to put a 45-degree angle on these two pieces of plastic for this building, just like I did on the 2-story and 3-story buildings. So we start off with the sanding block and then to the file, just the same as all the other walls. It's just a long process of repetition, really. It's just the same thing over and over and over. You kind of get a feel for all of it, so it does get a little quicker each time you do it. Here I'm going back and marking the window. There's only one window in one of these walls. It's a smaller window. It's a 4/4 pane, real narrow window that goes in this shed. So I mark the top and bottom with pencils because there's brick rows for the lead to follow there. And on the sides I use this knife to scribe it because you're going over various levels of brick, so it gets a good scribe mark. Pre-drilling the hole just like I did with all the windows in all the other walls, just giving something for the nibbler to get into so I can nibble away the majority of the plastic in this, then grabbing the nibbler and coming back and nibbling out that hole. And it just gets little tiny chunks. You can see the pile over to the right side of the screen there, previous chunks from previous windows. Once again, save all your scraps. These would be great scrap of some sort for a gondola load or something like that, or a junk pile somewhere in some roadside scene or something like that. Coming back with a knife, doing my rough cutting for the openings once again, and just kind of getting into the corners, giving a good area for the file to come in and give a real finished edge for the window to sit down in really tight. And if you do it this way, you get to the point where your windows do have a nice edge to them, and there's not a lot of gaps. But it's just a long, drawn-out process, and tons of windows to do. So it's just something you have to keep on top of. Then after the window hole was cut out, we glued together this little shed corner, just like all the big parts of the buildings. I've got my square there on the table once again. I put glue on it, get it to the point where it's pretty well starting to set up, and then I use that down there, and then we glue it into place in the corner of those two buildings. While we put the plastic in the corners of the back walls, this will strengthen that front corner that really has no support in it and give it a lot of square too. And here you can see this is just setting up against the previous building that we built, but at this point it gets to the point where it just feels really good. You can start to see a major building coming together here. And so there you have another installment of the Beanery. Things are starting to come together well. The wall that is duplicated or flipped from the wall that we just built, I'm just going to do off camera. It's just a duplication of what we just did. All these become very repetitious at this point. So I'm going to do that off camera, and when we come back I'll kind of show you that sitting next to the building too. But it starts to get exciting when you set all these walls together and you start to see everything come together, and how your progress is getting along. It's kind of discouraging when you first get started and you think about how much work you have ahead of you in one of these projects, especially a big building like this. But it's really exciting now. It's starting to come together. I really like everything that's coming together so far. There's not been any really major mistakes that I've made that have put me in a bind with having to redo anything. So that's all been good. So stay tuned for the next section of this building, and we'll start doing some wood trim and painting and other things on this to kind of break up the monotony of just building walls. I'm excited about moving on to that phase, because things start to look a little more finalized as you start to get into all that. And then the next phase is putting buildings together, and then detail on everything. There's a lot of detail on the roofs and walls and various things, gutters, chimneys, just all kinds of little things that you can add in to make it more realistic as you go along. I'm not sure really what I'm going to do with the platform on this. All the pictures that I have, it's kind of a triangular shape, the way the building is set in the platform, and it has stone, big cut stone walls along the outside edges of that platform. But the pictures really make it look like it was kind of a gravelly area in between, and I'm not sure. They would have had issues rolling around baggage carts and stuff on that. So I'm going to talk to some people that were around during the time that that building was there and see where I can come up with some answers for that. Also, these building walls that I'm doing right now had real weird roof structures. The first building behind that tower just has a normal roof that comes up, but the two in the middle, or behind that building, actually come up from either side and then come down and meet in the middle. And I have no pictures of anywhere where those come together in the building, so I don't know if they had individual walls in the building, which would not have made sense, or just a gutter system to trap all the water and carry it out of there. It was really a peculiar situation. Someone asked for some information on that too, as well as the bridge that goes between the two hotel buildings at the second story level. I need a little more info on that. So there's still some research to do on this building, although we're well into working on the building. So in any case, thank you for joining me again. I do appreciate it, and look forward to the next one coming around. Share and subscribe. Let people know this is out there. Especially people in the model railroad business. Hopefully they can learn how to build some buildings and do things that they can't buy out there on the market. And subscribe to the channel. It's a free thing. I mean, it's no big deal. You just get a notice when new videos come out, so that way you can keep up with the series and continue to watch what's going on with the build of this building. And anyway, coming up on Thanksgiving season, and well, I'm not sure when I'm actually going to get this released. Thanksgiving may be over, but the holiday season in general, I want to wish all of you a very happy and healthy holiday season. And you know, share some time with loved ones. Don't spend all your time in a dark back room somewhere doing projects for your model railroad. So anyway, thank you again for joining me, and happy model railroading.